No forward players have improved under him. So that's a big task for him this season, is to get more of a tune out of these attackers, because we can't just keep throwing money at the problem.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of the Premier League Predictor. Today we'll be talking about Chelsea. Now, it's fair to say a lot of their fans are a bit disillusioned with their club, I suppose, to an extent, especially after last season. But there's high hopes for the season ahead. They've got new owners now in place. They certainly are building a new team. And to talk us through it, I have got a good friend of mine. We've got Charlie Patrick from the BluesBrothers Podcast. He also does some great stuff on the YouTube channel. But before we check in with Charlie, make sure you subscribe to our channel, give it a like, give us your comments as we go along. And I'll also add it into the cards right now. Have a look at our other series and episodes that I've done with other clubs' fans as well. There's been a host of different clubs that we've already done this with, so make sure you check that out right now. But Charlie, absolute privilege to have you on to discuss Chelsea and more importantly about your future prospects with Ted Bowley in charge. I suppose we might as well start off by getting your thoughts about last season. I mean, yeah, you guys finished up in 2 cup finals, unlucky in the Champions League, and yeah, considering the mismurmurs of that squad, the case of Lukaku, for example, and, you know, Tuchel losing his shit at times, I suppose. How does it feel at the moment when you kind of look back at last season?
Oh, first of all, mate, thanks for having me. Pleasure as always. Yeah, last season was an absolute madness, you know. It was kind of Chelsea encapsulated in one, really, you know, solid start to the season, you know, feeling relatively confident, you know, obviously Champions League victory to build upon. I mean, it's easy to say now, but the business, if we're being honest, was totally poor. Yes, we had a Lukaku, and I'm happy to take a large slice of humble pie. I've went on my channel, other channels, like a lot of Chelsea fans, missing piece of the puzzle. Yeah, he's going to win a golden boot. These are the goals that are going to get us the Premier League. And yeah, it was the complete opposite. It was a difficult one. Times we started so well, though. You know, we're top in December. You know, then obviously Ben Chilwell gets injured. That's a massive blow. We have Reece James out for large portions of the season. Another massive blow, particularly with that 3 or 5 at the back system. You're very, very reliant on your wing backs to contribute to the attacking play. And with 2 of the best in the business missing for large chunks of the season, that proved problematic. And we really struggled to break teams down, particularly at home, you know, drawing to the likes of Everton's, your Burnleys, etc. You know, really struggling to break teams down. The sanctions as well on top of that. You know, fans not being allowed to go to certain games and stuff. Yeah, it was difficult times. And yet, despite all that, we came within 2 penalty shootouts of winning 2 domestic cups. I mean, I was at both games at Wembley. We actually played pretty well in both finals. Carabao Cup certainly should have won that comfortably. I mean, Mason Mount of 2 great chances. Lukaku actually robbed of a perfectly legit goal by VAR. So we're talking fine margins. But at the end of the day, people only remember the winners. And the fact of the matter is we lost both those finals. And it was, yes, we had the Club World Cup, you know, first time in their history, everything won, quite a fitting way for Roman to bow out, I suppose, by coming full circle, winning the lot. But yeah, at the end of the day, mate, it was just like, I kind of looked at it and thought, despite everything that's gone on, kind of satisfied, but then thinking it could have been so much more. And I don't know if it's just unrealistic expectations because of how successful we've been in the past. And we kind of have to accept now that City and Liverpool are just better than us in terms of consistency over a league season. In a cup competition in one-off games, we've more than proven that we can beat Manchester City, we can beat Liverpool. Liverpool, 4 games against them last season. They didn't beat us once.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's difficult. But do you know what? I think there's reasons to be optimistic, but I think just frustrating because whilst the season was good, it could have been so much better.
And get your thoughts on Thomas Tuchel, obviously. I wonder whether to an extent a lot of his selection was to play a part in how the season kind of played out in the end, because I know there's a few kind of decisions where Chelsea fans were maybe disillusioned with what he was trying to achieve. I mean, if I recall one particular game, I'd say the first leg against Real Madrid, for example, where that seemed to be like a lot of head scratching around his decision making. I mean, do you feel he's learned from that experience, or is it a case of he was just working with the squad and the players who were potentially against him as well at the time?
I think it's a bit of both, you know. I think you see top-level managers, you see Pep do it as well. They often overthink things too much. trying to do something a bit different, trying to catch the opposition, off guard, rather than kind of just sticking to, your principles. I know you want to try and mix it up sometimes, maybe try and catch the opposition off guard, but generally speaking, stick with what's worked. And, as you say, that opening 20 minutes, I think we ended up we went with the back four to start with. We had Aspilicueta at left back. And yeah, it was a total disaster. And these things happen. You take gambles, high risk, high reward. It was high risk and it backfired massively. But it still remains that despite all that, we should have gone through in that game. Over both legs. I'd say we're better than Real Madrid over. Well, not in the first 20 minutes or half hour or so, but we were better than them, I think, over the two legs, and we just come up short again. But yeah, as far as Thomas Tuchel's concerned, I think I think he wants to play a four, but I think the reason we're playing with the three is because of the personnel we've got. We've kind of stumbled across it, and with the players that we've got in the squad, it suits that system suits us, but it's very much dependent on players staying fit for the duration of the season, because having at the start of the season said, this is one of the best Chelsea squads we've got. As the season unfolded, you could see that there were clear areas where it was massively unbalanced, in terms of wing-back depth, virtually zero. Midfield, again, not an awful lot of versatility in there. The forward line, there was options, but no one was like delivering other than Mason Mount. No one was doing anything. And I see people critical of Thomas Tuchel last season. These guys are never going to gel if we're constantly chopping and changing the front players. But then from the manager's perspective, he's having to change it because each person he puts in is not delivering. So how at Chelsea, we're not in a position where, we can take a chance to say, right, we're going to put these players in, we're going to let it run for 4 or 5 games, regardless of the results, and just try and get something. We're not in a position to do that. And I think he probably has learned a lot from last season. Very difficult to deal with, everything off the pitch as well. Not easy to cope with. But I think this season he'll be stronger. Yet, will he make mistakes this season? Absolutely. All managers will make mistakes this season. But I think tactically, he's very tuned in. One thing I would like to see him improve on is sometimes I feel that in games he's a little bit, with the substitutions, I sometimes feel he's more reactive than proactive. Like you can sort of see something potentially starting to unfold and you think, right, if we make a change now, we can potentially combat this rather than waiting for it to happen, chucking some subs on and then you're chasing it. But yeah, I love the guy. I think he's a phenomenal manager, and I think he's someone that, with a new era, new ownership, that, if he wants to stay and the board are going to change the ways that Chelsea have been, then this is someone that could be here for 5, 6, 7 years, like with Pep, like with Klopp at Liverpool and City. I think that's what we need now, because I think anyone can come in and win a cup. You've got to string a few games together, but ultimately we're seeing in the Premier League now that Pep and Klopp in their respective squads have virtually signed all the players, and there's no surprise that those two are the ones doing the business. Whereas Chelsea, managers coming in every 18 months, 2 years, you've got basically 5 or 6 managers, players, and it's so difficult for someone to build a squad and get any continuity. So I think this summer is the start of giving Tuchel what he wants, allowing him to sign the players he needs, and just continue to roll from there. And hopefully, maybe in the next 2 years, we can perhaps sustain a challenge for the title.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to allude to the fact that it's incredibly rare that someone's being empowered to kind of bring in his own kind of players, because it's normally in the hands of a managing director or something of that kind that would bring in these players with a view of either selling them on down the line, like you have been with a lot of the youngsters that you've kind of loaned out and then kind of moved on for profit, or it kind of seems to be like a philosophy. So certainly with the likes of Michael Edwards at Liverpool, there seems to be a reason or rationale behind every signing. So it'd be very interesting to see whether that helps Chelsea, but also it could be an element of more pressure on Tuchel if it doesn't go right? So going back to the players, though, apart from if we take away Lukaku, who, it's been known that obviously he's caused a bit of a stir for Chelsea. There's been a number of players that haven't performed last season, the likes of Ziyech, for example, Pulisic. I could name a whole host of players, to be honest. But if there's one player you were probably more disappointed with, was there anyone apart from Lukaku that you would say in that mix?
To be honest, mate, other than Mason Mount, they're all terrible. Like not for the whole season. They showed moments. Christian Pulisic, I think, is a fantastic player. Still only 23 years of age, but he's been here. He's been here a few seasons now, and you're sort of thinking there's ability there, but how many times can we keep saying it's there without actually seeing it? So I'm not just singling him out. I'd expect more from Christian Pulisic. I expect more from Hakim Ziyech, particularly given how he is. I felt when we switched to a back four, we played a front three, and he was on that right-hand side. We did that a few games. He was so much better. And he's shown moments as well. But again, I don't know if he comes across a little bit lazy. In terms of, I'm not saying he's a lazy player, but it just looks like he's not really putting much effort in. For me, he's one of our technically most gifted players. That left foot is phenomenal. And he does come up he's had some great goals as well against Tottenham last year as well. But just not consistent enough. And I think the thing with Ziyech is he's not like these other ones. He's not sort of 22, 23, where there's room for quite a lot of improvement. Ziyech at 28, 29, that's kind of your lot now. He's not really getting any better. He might get more consistent, but he's not getting any better. That's another one. Timo Werner's been a massive disappointment. Again, had a great season at Leipzig. That one season was phenomenal, but I've spoken to a lot of people about this, in terms of the Bundesliga. Defenses play very different. There's a lot of high lines in the Bundesliga. You don't get you hardly get any high lines in the Premier League. Unless it's Southampton, then we're all good. Werner seems to score against them fairly often. But other than that, it's just for me, it's a lack of consistency. And one thing with Thomas Tuchel, I've got no qualms about his ability to improve defenders. We've seen massive improvement in defenders. Chalobah's come on leaps and bounds last season. Antonio Rudiger, who was frozen out basically under Frank Lampard, was looking for a move. Tuchel unlocked something in him that I don't think anyone was expecting to go on to become one of the top centre-backs in world football under his tutelage. But looking at forward players, unfortunately, as things stand at the moment, Tuchel so far during his tenure has got no improvement out of any of those forward players, other than Mason Mount, who had a great season last season. No forward players have improved under him. So that's a big task for him this season, is to get more of a tune out of these attackers, because we can't just keep throwing money at the problem. Right, these guys haven't worked, let's bring another two and see if this works, going in a kind of a rinse and repeat cycle. So yeah, there's big pressure on him to get this attack firing for next season.
Now, if we move on to the kind of transfer work that he has already done, and also the wish list, he's obviously moved in for Raheem Sterling, so that's been confirmed for around 50 million from Man City. We've also got Koulibaly, who I really do rate, 40 million from Napoli. Despite his age, he's still, I think, the right kind of player to replace the likes of Rudiger, who's moved on to Real Madrid, but also just give that stability to that back line right now. But there has been a lot of murmurs around potential players that he's been looking at, the likes of De Ligt, who's been confirmed now at Bayern Munich, for example. Cristiano Ronaldo, who's been, I think that was more smoking screens than anything else. I think he was just trying to sound out who would be potentially out or in for him, potentially. Nathan Ake, for example, is another one that's been linked. But I think the main ones that you've been reflecting even on your own podcast and your channel is the likes of Kimpembe, Jules Koundé, and even the likes of Declan Rice. So from those players, I mean, does that sound like the kind of players that Chelsea need, or do you think there should be more targets that maybe the likes of Tuchel should be targeting?
I mean, well, we desperately need centre-backs. It's so obvious. Koulibaly's come in, as you touched on, I think a phenomenal signing, a really great player, leadership, and 31 years of age. He's the same age. I see people making the age argument. It's like, he's the same age as Van Dijk. People aren't saying Van Dijk's finished, are they? So I need a bit of perspective there. Yes, he'll have to adapt to the Premier League, but he's got everything that you would want in a centre-back. He's right-footed, but he can play left side. He's so comfortable. Yeah. He's good at bringing the ball out. He's got a good range of passing. He brings leadership, he brings experience, everything that we need in that back line. So I think it's perfect. And, a 4-year deal with an option of a fifth at 31, that take him up to 36 if he stays a duration. We've seen what Thiago Silva's done, playing into his late 30s. I think at centre-back, Koulibaly is going to be fantastic, exactly what we need in that back line. In terms of bringing another one in, I feel we need at least two more. Whether that's going to happen or not we'll wait and see. I think this week is a big week in the centre-back market. Jules Koundé, obviously another one, I think a great player, 23 years of age, versatile, right centre-back, could obviously play right back if needed as well in an emergency, whether, a bit of a bidding war with Barcelona, I'm not sure. We kind of only got ourselves to blame if we miss out. Should have been done last summer, could have been wrapped up ages ago. We've been looking at other targets. De Ligt, ultimately, yes, I would have liked him, but if we're being honest, I think for the money, too much money, I'd rather perhaps get Koulibaly and Koundé in for the same money as it would have cost for De Ligt. I think that's a better use of funds. As good a player as De Ligt is, I think that's a little bit on the steep side. I think there's Kimpembe as well, who I don't know an awful lot about. I've seen him play in the Champions League. Obviously seen him play for France in the World Cup and stuff. Not awful, a decent centre-back. Tuchel's got a good relationship with him from their time at PSG, but Kimpembe is more than happy to stay. So even if a fee is agreed, I think they want about 50 million quid for him. It would ultimately be down to the player again, and he doesn't seem that keen. Whilst he would be open to it, he's more than happy to stay in France, which for me is a little bit of a worry. But yeah, I'm really happy with the business so far. There's more to do. Yes, we could do with, I think, a midfield player, but for me, Declan Rice is the obvious one. I don't think a midfield player is going to come in this summer. I think we need more centre backs. We need wing back cover as well. I'm a little bit disappointed that it looks like Jonathan Klaus is going to head over to Marseille. I think that would have been a good signing as a backup, cheap as well, about £8 million. Raheem Sterling, obviously delighted with, one of the best wide players in the Premier League. Hopefully, the curse of joining Chelsea as an attacker doesn't continue. Hopefully he maintains his footballing ability, which we've seen so many others lose when they pop that blue shirt on. But yeah, transfer business, I'm really pleased with. It's just the start. Still only 2 players in. I think we need another 3 or 4. But yeah, I like the way it's looking. And, it's just refreshing to see us be effective in the transfer market, acting quickly, being ruthless, and just, spending good money, not kind of spending over the odds, and not just going for kind of big names that we've done in the past. And it just doesn't work out.
And one more point that I want to kind of bring into this is something that I thought was quite interesting. Yourself and George were discussing about the likes of Ross Barkley, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Danny Drinkwater, who I think it was combined potentially were taking away about $500,000 in wages per week. I mean, I think this window kind of, signals that it's going to be harder to shift on these players unless there's a certain kind of sum that's going to be flashed about, and that I don't think is going to happen in this current climate right now. We've seen abroad, for example, in Italy, where they're barely kind of making any kind of transfers with money. It seems to be a lot more loan deals and freebies at the moment. So, I mean, for you guys, do you think that's going to stop you from bringing in players? Because, you have to play within the financial fair play as well. And that's going to be even harder. But I suspect there'll be a lot of deals as we go towards the end of this kind of transfer window in September. So, do you think that's going to be imperative to move on these players before you bring in some others?
100%. I think that the priority at Chelsea has always been this window. We get the Sterling in or whatever, get a few defenders in, and then the focus is going to shift to the outgoings. And yes, 100%. The massive problem we've got is that the wage structure at the club, which is being changed now. Contracts being offered by Bowley and stuff now are very heavily incentivized deals. I know Raheem Sterling's just signed for like about 300k a week, which kind of does my point a little bit of disservice. But in terms of looking to move Koulibaly, these deals are incentivized quite heavily. So I think we're moving away from like offering players like Drinkwater 100k a week. Bakayoko on big money, Batshuayi still on half decent money. Guys that aren't good footballers. But because they've got big wages, we can't get rid of them. And I think we're getting to a point now where obviously Marina's gone. She drives a hard bargain, wants good money for players. And I think we're going to have to be at a point now where we need to trim the squad. It's bloated. There's a lot of players on decent money that aren't good enough to play for this football club or just aren't part of the plans. And I think we're just going to have to accept that we either literally release them from their contracts, or we just say, look, whatever we get for them, just accept it and get those wages off the books and rebuild, because it's going to be a massive thing, because we are wasting a lot of money, as you say. The report from Matt Law in a Telegraph is say about £500,000 a week on the likes of, as you say, well, Drinkwater not anymore, his contract's expired, but the likes of Timo Werner, Ross Barkley, Malang Sarr, etc. Wasting 500 grand a week is not really sustainable. So I think early signs are encouraging from Bowley. Really impressive how he's operating in the transfer market. He's doing a lot himself at the moment. In the short term, we obviously just appointed a new president of business, so that's kind of off the pitch activities. He wants a sporting director. That will happen, but in the short term, he's working around the clock. He's jetting off all over the place. He's meeting with prominent figures in football. Establishing relationships and stuff, doing all the right things. But yeah, it's good, promising signs. But yeah, he's learning on the job still. Once he gets his own people in, it will be a bit easier. But yeah, 100%, the wage structure needs looking at, because we're trying to get rid of players, but we can't get rid of them because of the ridiculous money they're on.
Well, Charlie, I'm going to push you on this. So we are recording this on the 19th of July. I had to double check then. But yeah, obviously, just to make sure people don't shoot you down and more to the point. But where do you think Chelsea are going to end up this season? It's a tough ask, but let's assume the window transfer business is all done. Where do you aspire Chelsea to be?
If I'm being perfectly honest, I think we'll be third this season again. I think we'll be closer. I don't see City and Liverpool have strengthened really well. City obviously adding Erling Haaland is a game changer. No guarantees that it'll hit the ground running, but you'd fully expect so. Liverpool decent again. Obviously, Mane's going to be a big loss. Darwin Núñez coming in for big money. Be interesting to see how he gets on. But the fact of the matter is, we finished 15, 20 odd points off the top two. Now, I'm not saying that Liverpool and City are going to have 90 plus point seasons again, but I don't see them having a 10 to 12 point drop off whilst we maybe have that sort of improvement. I can't see. I think we'll improve if we can finish less than 10 points off the 10 points or less from the title. I'll be pleased with that. I think we desperately need a good run in the Champions League, but a domestic cup is the most important for me. Even if it's a Carabao Cup, I don't really care. Yeah. The fact of the matter is now, I've been to Wembley twice last season, lost both finals. It's painful walking back down Wembley Way when your team's lost in a final. I think Wembley record is poor in finals as well. I think we've lost the last 5 or 6 domestic cup finals on the spin. That needs to change. First team ever to lose 3 FA Cup finals in a row. These are records you don't want. So yeah, for me, third place, I'd say as things stand right now, close the gap on the top 2 and add a domestic cup to the trophy domestic cup to the trophy cabinet, and I would be happy with that. But don't get me wrong, if we're top at around November time, and I might change my mind, and if we end up third, I might be a bit disappointed. But yeah, as things stand, I think we've got to be realistic. Transitional period, new owners, new way of doing things. If we can finish third again and close the gap and win a domestic trophy, then I'd be more than happy with that.
Fascinating. Well, many thanks to you, Charlie. And for you viewers, let us know, what do you think? Do you agree with Charlie? More importantly, do you think Chelsea will be in the top 3 at the end of this season? Let us know below in the comments. But for now, we'll take care and see you at the next episode.